So, I'm finally going to go see Star Wars The Last Jedi tonight, and I'm going to do that thing I did with the Thor Ragnarok review, where I'm going to record my initial thoughts first, and then going to go see the movie and tell you how I felt about it afterwards. So, this is going to be a very weird movie-going experience for me, because I have never spoiled a movie for myself the way that I have spoiled The Last Jedi for myself. I know every single twist and turn and every plot point that's going to happen in it. The only thing I don't know, because reviews that I've watched have been surprisingly coy about how the movie actually fits together. So a lot of the actual plot I don't know, but every plot point and twist I know it's going to happen. I've never seen a movie like this before, at least not like a newer blockbuster movie. I think that's actually going to help, because it means that I'm not going to get as emotional about it as if I was seeing this for the first time and like had these all these expectations. Now I managed to manage my expectations a lot more. So I've actually been bad-mouthing this movie for the past 2 weeks, ever since it came out. Ever since I saw that it had a Rotten Tomatoes audience score in the mid-50s, and I think it's actually gotten lower since the opening weekend. Ever since I saw that, I've been really interested in what people had to say about it, and why there was just such a visceral rejection of it. However, I'm sort of left with this nagging feeling. What if I actually like the movie? You know, I've called the movie propaganda. It does sound like that all the people that do like the movie, like really like the movie, like it because it agrees with their far-left progressive politics, even though director Rian Johnson has said that it wasn't intended to be political. So, but what if I actually agree with, say, diversity in comics? What if I agree with the 90-something% of critics on Rotten Tomatoes that like it? So, if it does, I'll be honest, but if I don't like it, I don't like it. It may be that because I'm already have so little emotional investment in not only this movie, but in Star Wars in general at this point, it may just be that I just want to see cool lightsaber stuff and space dogfighting stuff, but I don't know. It's about, what time is it? It's about 7:45 now. I don't know exactly when the movie is, but when I get back, I'll try to record my thoughts on it. See you then. Star Wars The Last Jedi review take... I forget what take I'm on. This is no joke. The 5th or 6th time I've tried to review this movie in a recording like this. A part of it was that there were some weird technical problems, but part of it is that this is it's a very dense movie, even though it's just a dumb space opera. I kind of almost don't know what angle to take on it. There's so much to discuss. It's kind of weird, because on the one hand I don't care about it. On the one hand I'm just kind of over the whole Star Wars thing. On the one hand I don't really have emotional investment on it. But on the other hand, I could talk about this movie for like 5 hours. I seriously could. I almost want to do a live stream or get on a live stream with somebody and just talk about this movie forever, because there's so much to go over and I just don't know what angle to take on it. I haven't found one yet. The one that I want to go with, the one I think I'm going to go with for this review, is that the Star Wars The Last Jedi is the Vietnam War of movies. It's a movie that, much like America in Vietnam, we won every single battle and still lost the war. So too does Star Wars The Last Jedi do every single scene and every single element right, and it still loses the overall plot of the movie. So I don't like this movie, but I don't hate it either, the way that Douglas Ernst or Just Some Guy or Weaponized Nerd Rage or Angry Joe or Mundane Matt, before they quote-unquote changed their minds. I didn't have the visceral rejection of it that a lot of people did, but that was also probably because I'd already had the whole thing spoiled for me. So there was nothing that I could kind of latch onto. There wasn't anything that surprised me. I do think that if I had seen this movie originally, without knowing anything that I knew, I think I would have hated it, but because I kind of didn't, I already knew what to look for. So I was able to sort of see things differently. And for one thing, like Red Letter Media said, the movie's a mess. There's just so many plots to the movie. It's like what should be a hypothetically simple thing, which is that the Resistance needs to get away from the First Order, becomes increasingly complicated as it gets bogged down by one plot point after another. And then just when you think it's going to be over, it isn't. There's like another 45 minutes where you think it should be, okay, this is the part where it's over. There's a lot of people say that there's SJW stuff in it. The only SJW element that I think I saw in it was Admiral Purple Hair. You know, I'm sure you've seen the pictures. I'm sure you've seen other people reviewing it. But basically, there's this character and Vice Admiral. I honestly don't remember her name. Holdo or something like that. But I just call her Admiral Purple Hair. And she's this character that comes from nowhere and is given control of the increasingly minuscule Resistance fleet. Basically, she acts like a huge bitch to Poe Dameron, although Poe Dameron was acting like kind of a jackass to her too. So that one was kind of mutual, and she did outrank him. So I could see her not being nice, you know, or not being terribly friendly to Poe. What it doesn't explain, though, is basically it turns out that she has this really good plan, well, kind of good plan for escaping in a conventional military escape, and she doesn't tell anybody. And there's absolutely no reason for her to not tell anybody. It's not just that she doesn't tell Poe, it's that the entire crew doesn't know the plan, and there's absolutely no reason to not tell them. And that ends up causing a mutiny that nearly destroys the Resistance because they almost don't get away as a result of it. So she really sucks at her job, but the way that she acts and the fact that she has purple hair and the fact that she's wearing a dress in this otherwise, you know, sort of traditional military setting, it did very much feel like this sort of insert of a sort of idealized feminist that's sort of sticking it to the to the traditionally military system. So that's kind of the only real SJW thing I saw, and it's not insignificant because basically a solid half an hour of the movie wouldn't have happened if there wasn't this sort of need to prove Poe Dameron wrong and to not put him in his place. But I don't think it was as bad as some people think it was. A lot of people really didn't like Rose. I didn't mind Rose. I really didn't. The only thing that I realized of Rose is the, in case you don't know, Rose is the kind of chubby Asian girl that you see on all the posters. And she's in a significant amount of the movie. She's not just a side character. She's definitely one of the main characters. And I didn't mind her character at all until I started thinking about what they were actually doing with her. Basically, the whole Force Awakens. Finn, he was really the main character of The Force Awakens. He's the character that we really experience the universe through. We see his point of view much more than we see Rey or anybody else's. He's the only one that has a real arc through that movie. And in this movie, his whole thing gets shoved aside for Rose. So it's almost like the point of view character from the last movie. Well, it turns out that in the last movie, he was just there to facilitate Rey's story. So here, he's there to facilitate Rose's story. But you've completely buried the guy that was kind of the main guy in the last movie. So when I thought about that, it didn't annoy me from an SJW perspective. It annoyed me from, like, just a story perspective. It's like you could have had Finn doing all this stuff, and instead you had to have it mostly be the chubby Asian girl that does all this stuff. I will say this, they toned down the humor a lot from The Force Awakens. Because in The Force Awakens they had a lot of goofy humor, and at the time I didn't really mind it. But since then, I've seen what they're doing with the Marvel movies, and I think if I were to rewatch The Force Awakens now, I would kind of hate that. And Finn was the epicenter of a lot of that goofy humor. So maybe them sidelining Finn was a way to try to keep that under control. But at the same time, the movie wasn't free of that goofy humor. And it was in, like, really weird places where it didn't need to be. Not that it needed to be in it at all. Like, Star Wars didn't really have a lot of... It didn't have a lot of humor, and it definitely didn't have a lot of the, like, dumb humor that you see in The Force Awakens and to a lesser extent, The Last Jedi. But the fact that there was less of it is at least a step in the right direction. Problem is that I'm still not 100% sure why there was the widespread, visceral rejection of this movie that we've seen. Because frankly, to me, it's just like, it's an okay-ish, sci-fi space adventure movie. Actually, Star Wars is like, it's a fantasy in space, but that's neither here nor there. It's an adventure movie, and it's not really any better or worse than The Force Awakens, and in fact, in some ways, it's actually kind of better, in the sense that it at least takes itself more seriously. The main problem that I have with it, so there's a scene about 2/3 of the way through the movie, where, to say this out loud, it sounds so stupid, but basically there's a scene where the Force ghost of Yoda comes back on the planet that Skywalker is on, and he summons a bolt of lightning to destroy the Jedi Temple. And when he does that, Luke freaks out, and Yoda tells him that there was nothing in the temple and nothing in the books that he had apparently destroyed that Rey could not have told him. And that's just really dumb. It's really dumb. What it felt to me, I think this is a large part of why you had the widespread rejection of it. It felt like a Disney movie. It felt like a Disney princess movie, specifically. And I think that was the problem. I think people are just really tired of the Disney juggernaut. I think people are just tired of Disney telling them what to like. I think that people are tired of the widespread commercialization that we're seeing. Because, the original Star Wars was heavily commercialized. It was a joke. Spaceballs made that in the mid-'80s. But Disney has taken it to a new level. We're seeing one of these movies every year now. Not every 3 years, like the original trilogy, or even the prequels. Every year. We had Force Awakens, we had Rogue One, we have The Last Jedi, and next year we're going to have the Han Solo movie, which that looks like it's going to be a train wreck. But we're still getting it, regardless of whether you wanted it or not. And I really think people are just tired of that element, just the fatigue of seeing Star Wars everywhere, of knowing that you can't get away from it. Star Wars is special. You can say it's just a kind of a derivative space opera, that it rips off Flash Gordon, it rips off Kurosawa, it rips off old westerns, it rips off Joseph Campbell, but it still was special. It occupied a special place in people's hearts, and now just to see this thing taken over, being shown everywhere, and then the way that the actual movie plays out, we find out that there's nothing special about the Jedi, we find out there's nothing special about the Force, we find out that there's nothing special about a lot of elements of the original Star Wars that were very important. We find out that, for various reasons they were bad, corrupt, or just simply not as good as we thought they were. But Rey, on the other hand, she's like super duper special. The Jedi, which lasted for thousands of generations and kept peace, they weren't special, but Rey is. So that sort of flippant disregard for what the original movies had set up is, I think, pretty dumb. So I think that's a big reason. And also, the way that Luke is portrayed, that's a real big sticking point for a lot of people. The fact that the sort of point of view everyman protagonist from the first trilogy is now being shown as this crusty old man, and then you've got Rey, who's supposed to be the point of view everyman character for the new trilogy, and she's just special in every way, whereas Luke, he wasn't an especially deep character, but he had to go through a lot of crap. Whereas Rey's had a lot of things handed to her so far. And then we find out that she's like super special. I think a lot of people are annoyed by that. And then the one character that people did care about from the last movie, Finn, just gets completely sidelined in favor of a totally different character that we haven't seen before in this movie, Rose. What else? And then there's Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is the only character with any real depth to him, as far as I'm concerned. But the problem is, normally story flaws and story plot elements and plot holes really aren't that important to me, because I don't think story is all that important to a work of fiction. As long as the characters and the thematic elements are sound, the story is sort of the least important part. The problem is that these movies have had such bad world building that it ends up affecting character and theme. And you can see that most strongly in the case of Kylo Ren. With Kylo Ren, you have to talk about the First Order. Problem is that they have not really established why the First Order is evil. Like in the original Star Wars, it was a completely new world. I mean, yes, it was derivative, but it was completely new for that work of fiction. So, you know, all you need to know about the Empire was that they looked like Nazis, and they were willing to torture people, including, you know, a 19-year-old girl, Leia, and then they blew up a planet, Alderaan. That was all you need to know about them. And that was enough for you, as an audience member, to know that they were evil. Well, the thing is, the First Order, they haven't actually established why the First Order is so terrible. Like, they look like Nazis, yes, but, you know, if the Jedi were so terrible, which Yoda says they were, then it doesn't stand to reason that the First Order is necessarily wholly evil, even if they were ruled by an evil guy, Snoke. Like, the First Order, what have we seen them do? The only evil thing that we've seen them do is that they blew up, apparently, Coruscant, and a couple planets around Coruscant. Now, you know, that's a lot of people dead, no doubt, but the rebellion, the current republic, is built on the destruction of 2 Death Stars. You tell me that all of the people on the Death Star were evil? The Republic wanted to destroy the First Order, and instead the First Order destroyed the political center of the Republic. It's extreme. It doesn't have that, like, gut punch level evil that the Empire did when they blew up Alderaan. So what that means for Kylo Ren is that at the end of the movie, well, towards the end, it turns out to not be the end of the movie, but towards the end of the movie, when he is trying to convince Rey to join him in leading the First Order, Rey takes this as definitive proof that Kylo Ren is just irredeemably evil, that he would even ask that, rather than just trying to destroy the First Order. But it's not at all clear why that's the case. It's not at all clear why Order can't be used for good, especially because, and Rey doesn't see this, to be fair, but the only, like, genuinely evil thing that we see in the entire movie is the people profiteering off of war. Well, if there's no war, there's no profits. It would actually arguably be better to bring an end to the war, even if that meant the complete destruction of the Republic, and putting the First Order in charge of the whole galaxy. Like, if the only definitively bad thing we know about the First Order is that we know that the people who were in charge of it were bad, well, Snoke is dead, and that one redheaded guy, the evil general guy, he's not that hard to keep in line. He could be killed apparently fairly easily. So, why is it such a bad thing for him to ask Rey to lead the First Order with him? It seems to me that she could have easily done a lot of good doing that, and instead we're supposed to take this as definitive proof that he's evil. So because of the very poor world building that they had up to that point, a major turning point for the character is seriously cast into doubt about what it actually means. Like, you could easily say that this was Rey making sort of an emotionally satisfying choice, but not a logically satisfying choice. And so that's a knock on her character. But I don't know. We don't... Once again, the moral basis for the movie is really shoddy. In the original trilogy, which was not very deep, mind you, but we understood that the Empire was very oppressive, that it just wanted to control everything, and that the Rebellion didn't want that to happen. But in this new trilogy, we don't fully understand what the First Order is. We don't know how they came about. We don't really know what they want, and we don't know why that's inherently worse than whatever the Republic was doing. Like, if the Republic is so stupid that it apparently doesn't have a military that can deal with the First Order, and instead was leaving the sort of containment of the First Order to this ragtag rebellion, maybe it deserved to die. I'm being completely honest about that. I mean, if it was coexisting in the galaxy with this hostile power, the First Order, but it hadn't taken proper precautions for what might happen in the event of some kind of horrible catastrophe like the Capitol planet being somehow incapacitated or blown up. Frankly, the Republic sounds really stupid to me, and it sounds like they may have been really, soft and/or weak. So that's a problem with the world building, and it's a problem with plot elements that may not have otherwise mattered. I would not have needed much to completely ignore all of this, but they didn't even give me the little bit, and because of that, the entire climax of the movie almost is completely lost on me as to a lot of the significance of it. I actually wonder if there's going to be a Star Wars Episode 9. Like, I don't think this movie lost money, but I don't think it's going to make nearly as much as Disney was maybe thinking or hoping it would. Because these movies, it's made a lot of money at the box office, but these movies are fantastically expensive. So they actually have to make quite a bit of money before they're making a significant profit. I don't know what level they're at right now, but I do know that the drop-off from week 1 to 2 was the largest for any Star Wars movie and one of the largest in movie history, period. So the hatred for this movie, it's not just an online thing, it's real. It's visceral, and it's widely felt, and I'll admit I didn't feel that. But I think I can understand. My big thing is that people ultimately respond to things that are lasting, things that are built to last. And this new Star Wars, even though it does have a lot going for it, and I mean, like I said, this is my 5th or 6th take on it, so there's obviously a lot to talk about. The fact that it's getting people talking does say that it has some power, but the whole point of the movie is that you have to destroy the past. Well, what happens when this gets destroyed? That's the problem. It's like, if you're trying to build a foundation on the ruins of the old one, what's going to stop somebody from destroying the foundation that you've built? And I think that's what we're at the point as, is that people are just rejecting this new foundation. People still like the original trilogy, and this movie did not feel like it was honoring it, and this movie actually felt like it was trying to do something completely different from what the original trilogy was trying to do. And I think people are responding to that. But only time will tell. In any case, tell me what you thought of the movie. Tell me if you thought my review was in any way... This wasn't really a review. This was more just adding to the discussion. Tell me if I was on point at any point, though. Like, comment, subscribe. In any case, this is Unranked Chevron signing off.